Hello, everyone. We are our group focused on the thematic of populations. My name is Dhruv, and I'm an architect and architectural historian currently logging in from India.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lera, and I'm a researcher logging on from Belarus.
Hi, my name is Neilson Koerner-Safrata. I'm a video game designer from Montreal, Canada.
Hello, my name is Nastia, and I'm a researcher and writer, and I'm calling now from warm and very sunny St. Petersburg. And I'm going to briefly say a few words about a project which explores current terms of access and mobility and imagines new frameworks under which these terms might be redesigned to address the crisis in place.
In the given conditions of missing infrastructures that populations attempt to replace through displacement, what are the new terms of access and mobility that need to be reimagined? Humans, with the capacity of forming complex societies, have become a planetary force. To help situate ourselves, our species has devised systems of categorization which have evolved throughout our history. The current nation-state system stems from the Industrial Revolution and imperialist expansionism during the 18th and 19th centuries, fueling the national interest ideology with unified language, culture, and identity. The conception of Westphalian sovereignty is reinforced by the frameworks of legitimization that recognize individuals as subjects. Citizenship is the foundational mechanism through which the nation-state acknowledges the individual's relationship to the state. It is the right to have rights. The passport, as an extension to this mechanism, defines the conditional terms of access through mobility, a recognition of the subject beyond the boundaries of the nation-state, reaffirming the frameworks of control of its borders. This acknowledgement is what activates the right to access and mobility, which are essential agents of identity construction. The terms of access are traditionally devised through rights of land, ius soli, rights of blood, ius sanguinis, or rights of marriage, ius matrimoni, none of which can be fair determinants who wants access to basic universal services. The existing citizenship models are flawed. The political, private, and public rights conferred by the current citizenship model need to be reconsidered. The nation-state, with its borders, centralized governments, and sovereign authorities, is increasingly falling short in the hybridized, digital, and mobile world. With ever-mobile populations, climate change, international crime, and corporations surfacing as a global phenomena, the existing frameworks seem outdated to generate a viable response. We contend that every individual, regardless of the status of citizenship, should be able to access universal basic services. Universal basic services, as a form of social security, was conceived as an evolution of the welfare state, but was still deeply rooted within the current citizenship model. We draw from and extend the existing list of UBS, which consists of healthcare, legal services, shelter, food, transport, education, defense, climate, work, tax, information, and income. Expanding the boundaries of access conditions to these universal basic services, we aim to address the various pluralities essential to challenging the way populations are currently segmented. The legacy state institutions that provided these services might not necessarily be the future providers of universal basic services. Moving past entrenched public and private positions could be an important shift in governance. Conditions of access to services. What are the terms on which these universal basic services are rendered accessible to populations? Here, we will look at three ways by which people and services connect with one another. Condition 1. People move to services. Mobility of people is the most common condition of gaining access to services. We illustrate this condition by the case studies that demonstrate the inequity of mobility distribution throughout populations. The text at the top reflects the services at stake. The pandemic highlighted the shortcomings of the existing governance and citizenship models, which led to the dislocation of millions of people across the globe back to their countries of passport. Other examples, like the drought in Cape Town, the internal migration of daily wage workers during the pandemic for sustenance in India, the political dislocation of stateless Rohingya Muslims, and maternity tourism for better social security, highlight the multiscalar movement of populations that has been the focal response to a lack of access to basic services. The first mode, where populations move to gain access, has long been a normative condition. However, there are alternatives to it, which we present next. Condition 2. Services move to people. The second condition illustrates the movement of infrastructures to populations, minimizing the need for their displacement. These case studies show large-scale interventions that accelerate the access of services to populations. From transnational infrastructure projects like the Belt and Road Initiative for the integration of the regional infrastructure of South America, to the construction of private cities like Masdar, to privately provided services through zipline drone delivery, all highlight the diversity of private, public, and state actors who propel this condition. In these scenarios, mobility of services is a precursor to gaining access, but movement is not the only response. Condition 3. Remote access. Under the third condition, neither populations nor services move. Access is mobilized remotely. The Internet, cloud technologies, and decentralized access networks have made it possible to remotely plug into the services and gain access to them whenever and wherever you need, once the infrastructures are in place. The pandemic witnessed remote global interconnectivity at unprecedented scales. From sharing the genetic code of the virus and receiving social distance healthcare through apps, online education, e-residency schemes, to citizenship through investment, there are models in place which extend the virtual domain of access. These conditions enable remote access without the mobility of populations or services. The case studies charted above highlight three conditions of gaining access to services. First, people moving to services. Second, services moving to people. Third, remote access. When maximized, these conditions could create a viable way to access services. Framed this way, we explore the conditions as modalities of one framework for planetary universal basic services. We speculate on how governance can embrace unorthodox approaches to help universal basic services reach populations, regardless of how these two meet. Our vision of the framework is projected onto three existing case studies, which open avenues to propel the three modalities as a way to deliver basic universal services on a planetary scale. A. Subsidiarity. People move to services. The C40 network, which connects 97 cities to mobilize collective climate change action, is a good example of horizontally linked subsidiarity in action, which transcends the nation-state boundaries. These subnational governance networks are effectively linking up with all the multilateral organizations, like the UN and the OECD. With 70% of the world population estimated to migrate to existing city centers, can such planetary-scale alliances be re-evaluated beyond the purposes they currently serve? And there exists a possible worldview where the movement of populations is accelerated to gain access to universal basic services. B. Megastructure. Services move to people. LAPSED, an acronym for Lamu Port, South Sudan, Ethiopia Transport Corridor, is Eastern Africa's largest and most ambitious infrastructure project, bringing together Kenya, Ethiopia, and South Sudan. The massive-scale endeavor consists of 7 key infrastructure projects, including ports, highways, oil pipelines, railway, airports, a dam, and resort cities. The city will be built by private investors once the government puts in place sufficient infrastructure to facilitate growth. By bringing these infrastructures to populations, LabSat ensures access to employment, transportation, trade, and technological development between the three countries. How can such public-private transnational projects be restructured as mechanisms to accelerate the access of universal basic services without populations having to move? C. Decentralism. A remote access system. The e-Estonia project illustrates how such an access system can reach a global and later planetary scale. e-Estonia is a digital platform that offers e-residency to people living outside Estonia. Non-residents can apply to receive a smart ID card issued to them by the state, providing access to various electronic services that physical residents of Estonia are given. Decentralized infrastructures allow e-residents to access personal data, online banking, healthcare, and educational facilities, pay taxes, and vote online from any country in the world. However, this electronic document doesn't grant physical residency and the right to enter the country, and does not replace travel or identity documents. How can such a modality, which already serves facilities like voting and healthcare, encompass other services like UBI and extend the domain of remote access? Our framework, a three-mode unitary system of service provision, becomes a site for imagining mobilized modes of access to the services necessary for crisis resilience. The case studies serve as the possible alternative providers of the universal basic services that move past the legacy of state structures and bring in conversation subsidiarity alliances, public-private hybrids, and evolutionary nation-state actors. The exploration of possible new worlds, where the right of movement, or Ius Motus, is a precondition, carves a space for the exceptions to become the norm.